The Evil from the Blue Ridge Mountains. In rural Georgia, there was a family of 4 living in a quaint little house nestled deep in the woods. The father, John, worked as a logger, and the mother, Sarah, stayed home to take care of their 2 children, a boy named Jacob and a girl named Emily. One night, as they were all getting ready for bed, they heard strange noises coming from outside. It sounded like something was rustling in the bushes. John grabbed his shotgun and went outside to investigate, but he found nothing. The next night, the noises returned, but this time they were louder and more persistent. John and Sarah grew increasingly worried and decided to lock all the doors and windows. However, that did little to ease their fear. The next few days were uneventful, but the family could feel a sense of unease lurking around them. They started seeing strange shadows moving outside their windows and hearing whispers in the dark. They couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. One evening, as they were sitting down to dinner, they heard a loud crash outside. John grabbed his shotgun and went outside to investigate once again, but this time he was met with a terrifying sight. There was something moving in the darkness, something that was not human. John fired his shotgun, but it seemed to have no effect on the creature. It continued to move towards him, its eyes glowing in the dark. John ran back inside the house, locking the door behind him. For the next few hours, the family was trapped inside their house as the creature pounded on the door and windows. They could hear it howling in the darkness, and they knew that it was only a matter of time before it broke through. As the night wore on, the family grew more and more desperate. They tried calling for help, but there was no signal on their phone. They knew that they were on their own, with no one to save them from the horrors that awaited them outside. As dawn broke, the family could see that their house was surrounded by a thick fog. They could barely see their own hands in front of their faces. And then, they saw the creature. It was standing right outside their window, its eyes fixed on them. The family huddled together, praying for a miracle. And then, they heard a strange hissing sound, followed by a low rumble. The creature let out a final howl and disappeared into the woods. The family waited for several hours, afraid to move or make a sound. Finally, they ventured outside to find their surroundings eerily quiet. And then, they saw the smoke. Their house was on fire, and they knew that they had to get out. They ran towards their car, but as they drove away, they could see the flames engulfing everything they owned. They were left with nothing but the clothes on their backs and the memory of the horror that they had endured. As they drove away, they didn't know if they would survive. They didn't know if they would ever feel safe again. All they knew was that they had faced something evil in the woods, and it had nearly destroyed them. Their house was on fire, and they knew that they had to get out. But they didn't have a car, and they were surrounded by the dense forest. They grabbed what little they could carry and started running through the woods, hoping to find a way out. The family could feel the heat from the flames behind them, and the sound of the fire crackling and roaring only added to their terror. They stumbled and tripped over fallen branches, but they knew they couldn't stop. They had to keep moving. As they ran deeper into the woods, they could hear the creature's howls growing louder and more insistent. They knew that they were being chased, and that they had to keep running if they wanted to survive. Finally, after what seemed like hours, they stumbled upon a small cabin in the woods. It was old and decrepit, but it offered some measure of shelter. They ran inside and barricaded the door, hoping that it would keep the creature at bay. But as they caught their breath and looked around, they realized with horror that they had sought refuge in the creature's lair. The cabin was full of bones and rotting flesh, and there was a strange, pungent odor in the air. Their hearts sank as they heard the creature's howls growing louder outside the door. They knew that they had made a grave mistake, and that they were now trapped in the very place that the creature called home. The family huddled together, praying for a miracle. They could hear the creature clawing at the door, and they knew that it was only a matter of time before it broke through. Their hopes of survival grew faint as they realized that they had nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. They could only wait and hope that someone would come to their rescue before it was too late. I hope you enjoyed that story. We post new stories every day. Like and subscribe for more content.